embrace the technology and embrace the digital signature. And all of a sudden, in a short period of time, I was able to like catch up with some very seasoned real estate agents in the city and in the province, really. And like, I didn't know I could do it on my own. And that's where that problem comes in, and the profit does show up. One person with a salary job once DM'd me, and she's a good friend, and she comes from like the high school kind of a background. And she wrote like, aren't you embarrassed to be doing all this? And I'm like, aren't you embarrassed to only have 4 weeks holiday per year at your job? But like, I was still starting out, but that's what I was thinking in my head, right? Because I knew if I pushed myself this way, the profits would be there.
Problems are what? Problems are profits! What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and if you guys haven't been watching, recently we dropped a new podcast, the Problems or Profits podcast. It's kind of based upon this life philosophy I'm a little obsessed with, if you guys haven't noticed. Anyways, today we're going to be catching up with Jeff Wybo, who's really one of the first people that was there for Problems or Profits. So really excited to be able to just sit down and catch up with Jeff. Hope you guys enjoyed, and if you do, make sure you go and subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcasting platform you listen on.
Diving a little bit more into your background, there's been, at least a few times in your life where from an outsider looking in, you've made some pretty hard pivots. Would you mind just kind of talking through how you got to this point?
Sure. So I'm 36 right now. I'm at that age where you kind of forget what age you're at. So I'm 36. And I think usually I drop the backstory somewhere around, 16 years old, joined the military, Canadian Army. And I was in high school, so it was the weekends, and you go away in the summers. I just kind of learned my training and came back. Didn't have the circle of friends I have now. Just kind of thought, okay, that's a job, it pays. It was really good, and I thought that's the kind of career path I wanted to go on. I thought I wanted to get more into policing at the time. And I ended up, obviously, September 11th hit, and there's big talk, especially if you're in the military, to go deploy. So I ended up doing some extra training, and I learned to be a close protection operator, which protected our generals and our diplomats of Canada. So I got trained by American mercenaries, and then deployed to Afghanistan to protect our Canadian generals and diplomats. It was a pretty prestigious kind of role that I thought. So it was kind of, maybe that defines the Jeff Wybo. I just couldn't go over there and dig poop out of some, kind of like the Gulf War looking kind of soldier that's, burning the shit somewhere deep in Afghanistan. No, I was at the embassy dinners pretty much. No. So it was typical Jeff Wybo doing the more expensive things over there. I'm probably the only soldier that brought his tuxedo to Afghanistan for some reason, just in case there was tuxedo missions. I thought that'd be important. So that was wrinkled in my bag the entire time. Just needed to find a dry cleaner. But anyways, did 2 tours to Afghanistan, did not die, and came home. And that's kind of where I kind of began my first pivot, because then I get into my real estate investing career. And I didn't want to have to keep going back to Afghanistan. I didn't want to have to go to Iraq, because it was good money at the time. It's the only money I knew how to make. I knew you trade 30 days of your life and they give you $8,000. I was like, this is amazing. And it was like cash. It's the only way I knew how to make that. Now I can't even imagine why I would be doing that, but that was how you made money back then. And came home, had a bunch of those $8,000 that added up to whatever, 60 something, $70,000, and bought a triplex and started the house hacking journey. Didn't even know what that was called. Everybody talks about house hacking now, but back then, I don't know, you just rented the other units in a triplex. So I lived for free in the triplex and just sat around playing video games, living for free, and trying to not actually have to be in the real world doing a job, because I didn't really think that was cool.
I think just to build upon the social media, because I know it's been a big part of both of our journeys, but I think it's important to understand, like in 2016, when you were becoming a realtor, as weird as it may sound, like it was a different time from a lot of investors and realtor perspectives. And there was actually like a decent amount of flack we got, right? So like, do you mind maybe just talking about the Problems or Profits mentality, or just believing in the process at that point in time?
For sure. So I guess, the Problems or Profit, it could just be people kind of like always wanting to put their beliefs on you. It's a bit of, there's a problem, but they wanted me to do all these door hangers and flyers and door knocking. And I thought, okay, that's cool. And I understand that works for you, but I just didn't see the new guy joining it. I thought, okay, well, there's a problem. How do I profit? I didn't really understand what we're talking about now, but I mean, you look at that and you're like, that's just not going to advance me in 1 year, because a lot of the strategies that I think it could be in a lot of sales jobs, an older salesperson will tell the younger salesperson how they made money, but it's just like the generals. They're always fighting the last war. And maybe those generals would be extremely successful because they have some connections and whatever, but the new generals, like, I don't have these connections. Like, tomorrow, if I want to do decks in my neighborhood, I just want to build decks for everybody in my backyard here. I can't go and just call. I don't have 50 calls coming in because I'm the best deck guy. I have to go then break that. So if everybody is just putting a door knocker on your door and saying, I do decks, that's the baseline, right? So how do I stand above? And okay, there's only so many people doing decks, but there's 1,500 real estate agents. And then in Toronto, there's 75,000 real estate agents. So like, what are you doing beyond mailing a mailer to somebody's house? Because I don't know, what do? Collect those all and call you and pitch you for either the lowest commission or what can you sell? Like, it's a horrible place to put yourself in. So when Matt and I were deciding, let's go ham on social media, I'm extremely jealous that Matt got involved in his YouTube early and I was mostly just on my Instagram. I'm on my YouTube now, so if you want to subscribe there, that'd be amazing. But yeah, Instagram was the thing. I was just showing my day. Yeah, and like Matt's saying, I think probably, now a large portion of my daily DMs and audience are all real estate investors and some James Bond fans. But back then, it was just like people like that I kind of knew. And me talking about real estate was weird for them because they knew Jeff as the soldier. Now all of a sudden, Jeff's like, hey, so I got this duplex. And they're like, well, who's this Jeff guy? Why is he not allowed to talk about this? And you just got a problem. You got to kind of push through it because, one person with a salary job once DM'd me, and she's a good friend, and she comes from like the high school kind of a background. And she wrote like, aren't you embarrassed to be doing all this? And I'm like, aren't you embarrassed to only have 4 weeks holiday per year at your job? But like, I was still starting out, but that's what I was thinking in my head, right? Because I knew if I pushed myself this way, the profits would be there. And guys, I had zero training, zero. And Matt can attest. Like me and Matt looked at all our properties. We both kind of just made it up in the first couple of years of Matt being more of the real estate investor and me being the straight up agent pretty much. Just really figuring it out, going live. Like how many times did we go live at properties? Like the lighting probably horrible. Like we would do YouTube shows. We would do everything. We just give, like at such a local level too. Like
yeah. And what I'd really like to highlight and explore a little bit further with you, Jeff, as well.
Jeff, do you have any stories of obstacles or problems or blunders that have happened over your career in business that you've turned into a profit that you could share with the audience?
Well, let's see. Straight up profit. Well, Matt probably knows more than I do. So let's see. Straight up profit. I don't know. I think the problems was always being out late at night in your car and coming home late. Not necessarily at the meetup events, but at showings. And I was just from YouTube and lots of leads. And it's funny because a lot of professional agencies like to give me, say, hey, well, we got a lot of leads for you. Can we get 50%, 25%? And I'm like, I don't need leads. I have so many leads. I just need product. I just need more houses. But okay, so then you get all these people that are following social media and already asking me to go buy the product, the house. We're out late and it was just too much for me. It was just too much. So, the problem would have been, well, if I hire somebody, that person's going to get 10% of my business or something, like whatever deal I cut with the person, right? And I just was like, typically afraid of cutting anybody into your business. But then you're like, wait a minute, what if I can make $100,000 more because of this? Then is 10% a good thing or a bad thing? And what if I can be home more? And what if I can shoot more YouTube? And what if I can spend more time with family? So with Matt's push and with Emma Pace from Toronto, I had talking to her. She has a lot of 2 or 3 at any given time assistants running up and down the elevators of condo buildings. And I'm like, how are you doing that? She's like, yeah, I just get the lead. I do the call with them. And then I tell them the assistant, whoever will be there and open the door. And I'm like, yeah, but my clients want Jeff Wybo. They don't want my assistant. And I was dead wrong. They just want in the door. They'll call me afterwards. They'll FaceTime me at the property if needed, but it's actually very rare. They just want the door open. So now the problem was I couldn't handle all the showing requests, just as impossible. And now all of a sudden, insane having one assistant. I'm looking for more and more almost across the province because, another cool thing is when I first started off, especially in the first 2 years with Matt kind of going around, we were relatively only looking at London, Ontario, and I was relatively looking at London, Ontario only as a real estate agent. My social media might have been talking to North America, but my real estate knowledge was pretty much only London, Ontario. Now with the pandemic, I'm on that matrix looking at Windsor, Northern Ontario, Toronto, Hamilton, all this stuff. Now the whole province is my MLS all of a sudden. What before the car would have been the issue. Oh, I don't want to drive 2 hours. We've utilized now assistants to go open the doors, the social media, or the at least digital signatures and all the electronics to make the deal happen. So the profits have just been rolling in because I've actually focused and stayed on base, if you will, and not gone out into the field and gone and opened the door because they need to see Jeff Wybo. And then there's a 40-minute chat after the property with Jeff Wybo, and he gets home late, and then maybe you write the offer and the offer doesn't go through. So I cut out all that downtime that was so important in my first couple of years as an agent to focus on this. And it allows me so much more time to focus on purchasing my own large multifamily too, because the other stuff would stress me out because I didn't have time to focus on Jeff's real estate investing career because I was too busy making everybody else money. So because of my assistant now, no problem. He'll go open the door for you. We'll talk later for a 15-minute call and we'll get the offer written. My assistant can even write them now. I was against that at one point too. I thought Jeff Wybo has to write these offers. They're so, detailed and intricate. Nope, just need some systems. And that was the challenge, so the profit's been rolling in.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Problems and Profits podcast. Make sure you go over and subscribe on iTunes or Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. And download all the episodes, guys.
Problems are what? Problems are